Brought to you by Hallow, the world's #1 prayer app.
I first read this and my son was younger. When did Finding Meaning come out?
2019.
Okay, yeah. So that was about right. So my son was, I think, maybe 9. And I remember not having a psychology for it. And so I used to work in residence halls in universities, and I would hug these dads who were dropping their daughters off, and they would be sobbing, and I would be rolling my eyes out of the back of my head. And then I remember dropping my son off when he was like 1 at a local Tuesday, Thursday school, and I just sobbed in the parking lot. And so then fast forward, now I've got an empathy for your time's not here yet, but that pain is real, right? These people aren't. Reading this was a heavy. I didn't have an exhale for it, and I imagine 8 years later.
Well, it is a reminder that he was a gift I could not keep, that did not belong to me, and then I try to remember that about everyone. You know, this moment we're in is a gift that will be gone. And people think, oh, well, that sounds depressing. It actually becomes the opposite. When I go, oh, everyone's a gift that doesn't belong to me, every moment is going to disappear, it doesn't make me go, well, what's the point? It makes me go, well, this is my time with John. Let me really make it count.
It makes it infinitely more precious.
Let me go into this. Let me soak this moment up. Let me not throw it away. It's another podcast. It's another moment. This is an amazing moment I'm in, and to just take it in. I come out happier. I ran into a neighbor that used to work with 30 years ago. And she said, oh, I've been following your career. I would be friends with you, but it must be too depressing. And I was like, yeah, actually not. I mean, I'm kind of a really happy person. And I know you're like a grief expert and kid die and shootings and parents and da-da-da. Yeah, that makes me understand the preciousness of all this. That makes me understand joy.
In a visceral way.
Yeah.
Or almost like oxygen. I know the importance of joy.
And it's also like years ago, I was on the road all the time, day and night. And I would go to these cities and, have a hotel meeting room and be in the meeting room, and a few hundred people there. Next door was the meeting with the realtors. The nurses were down the hall, the Rotary Club. And at the end of the day, the staff would say, hey, what were you teaching? And I go, why do you ask? And they'd go, because your group was laughing the most. And I would go, grief. They'd be like, what? And what I think it's hard for people to understand is that group and those of us who are willing to be present for the joy, but also the pain, we have a larger bandwidth to sit in that pain, but we have a larger bandwidth for the joy, for the laughter. So it really allows us to become bigger people.
Yeah, I have noticed that several of my colleagues who, for our careers, we've just sat with hurting people, also are the most irreverent and the funniest and the most bring your jokes on about because I used to think it was because we have to, and now it's no, I get to right because this comes to an end at some point, and I want to have not left a laugh unlaughed, right?
Right. That's great. That's a great quote.
Yeah.
Right.
So I remember I was not well. I was in a season of not being well. And I was reading a book, and I was sitting by in bed. My wife and I were both nerds. We were both college nerds, and we were sitting up in bed both reading, as you would imagine two nerdy people reading.
Okay.
And I dropped the book, and I looked at her and said, and my son was 1.5, I think 2. And I was not making this adjustment well as a new dad, a professional, yada. And I looked at her and said, oh man, if I'm 92 and you're 91 and the clock strikes midnight and we turn and kiss each other and we both die and our son has to deal with our bodies, That's the best this gets. And every other scenario is just worse than that. And she looked at me. She just looked over her glasses and she's like, you're the worst. It's 10 o'clock at night. Why this thing? But it was this strange moment that I had been sitting with hurting people always at arm's length. And I don't think that made me very effective at it. But suddenly I got a child now. This ends for all of it. Was this reckoning, not a theoretical reckoning, but a reckoning here. And over the last 10 or 15 years since that moment, that specific moment, I've been wrestling with looking around culturally as this strange, like, plexiglass we've all given ourselves to try to live between us and reality, which is hard things happen to everybody. And pain is not a bug, it's a feature. It is. Loss is. Not being here someday is. As you've traveled the world sitting with hurting people and hurting groups, what's the birthplace of this denial that hard things are a part? And so learning how to sit in hard things is really where the effort should be, not in trying to pretend it's not all coming. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think it's fairly modern.
Yeah.
I think it's the 40s, 50s, the ideal TV shows, the ideal life, what life should look like. I mean, I think before there were all those Ozzie and Harriet and all those, TV sitcoms and Leave It to Beaver. I think it was, life is, tough. There's ups and downs. Mm-hmm. I can remember literally, you mentioned Leave It to Beaver. Right. Leave It to Beaver. I remember seeing an episode and Beaver says to his brother, Wally, I got a problem, Wally. And Wally goes, tell me about it, Beaver. And I remember saying to my older brother, I got a problem. And he goes, yeah, you think you got a problem? I have 2 beers and no opener. And I'm like, oh, life is different from that. And I think those were when the illusions happened. That, life can be perfect and we're not as good as the Joneses. I mean, I guess comparison and all that was always there. But I just know from this work, whether we're talking about any kind of loss and, we got the marriage that went wrong, we've got the death, we've got the betrayal. No, everyone's got something. Everyone on the planet has something. And freedom is only found in reality. When I am unhappy, I am fighting with what is. And there's a lot of things I want to fight against. But the problem is reality always wins.
Always.
Reality always wins.
And I've found that the more you don't traffic in reality, man, there's somebody always willing to sell us a path of avoidance, but my body's always solving for a reality. So as much as I don't want to admit that my teenager's not talking to me for some deeper issues, and I want to play over it, my body knows something's not right, or my marriage is falling apart, or my health is,
And we also live in a world that almost treats grief as contagious. Like, your grief is making me so uncomfortable. Can we get you past it?
Yes.
So I don't have to think about what if my marriage goes south? What if my partner cheats? What if I have someone who dies? Let's get through this to make life perfect again.
Everyone I've ever sat with has always circled back 100% of the time. I can't remember a scenario when they didn't say at some point they became responsible for their closest friends and family. It became their job to make sure they were okay.
I remember in my childhood, after my mother died, horrible shooting, she died alone in the hospital, all of this stuff went down. I saw so many people being killed. The trauma, the grief, it was, the only advice I got was be strong. And I think to most of us, be strong gets in don't have a lot of feelings and take care of everyone else.
Yeah.
That's where we start from.
But I think the phrase "be strong" almost is a reflection of the person who spoke it. I can't sit with this much hurt. I need you to deal with it. The strongest, most powerful men and women in my life have been able to sit with me when things have fallen apart.
Right.
And that's that old holding my arms up in the desert, right? When I can't, right? There's like, we'll take care of food when you can. We'll take care of the next right thing when you can't. That to me is strength in a powerful way, not, hey, toughen up, right? How do you sit with somebody and bring them to reality? Or can you?
Well, I think they have to be allowed to deny it.
Okay.
They have to be allowed to deny it for a while.
Okay.
You know, denial is the first place we go to. I can't believe they betrayed me. I can't believe this marriage is over. I can't believe that they died. Mm-hmm. I can't believe it. And I always tell people, someone will go, they're in denial. Mm-hmm. There's a grace in denial.
Yeah.
If we let all the pain of loss in, and one day we would be on the floor and never get up.
Ooh, I like that. Okay.
Denial paces the pain. It gives it a little bit at a time. So I think people don't understand what a grace. How amazing that our brain, our psyche, knows this is too much. It's okay to not believe it. For now.
For now. Yeah.
For now. And so, I mean, partly you start with, I can't believe it either. I'm right there with you.
Yeah.
I'm right there with you. You know, people are like, we got to get them out of the denial. Stop that. You do not need a crowbar. You know, you need a pillow to put behind them, not a crowbar.
For people watching this, they'll know, like, why does John have taking notes? I never take notes.
Oh, okay.
This is graduate school for me too today, man.
Download the Hallow app today and get 3 free months at hallow.com/Delony.